All right, everybody. Welcome to the first live stream that I've done. I appreciate y'all all stopping by. I'm Steve, K5ATA, and this is my channel, Goodgame Ham Radio and Outdoors, where we focus on ham radio and, well, outdoors, mostly ham radio. I'm a school teacher, been teaching school for about 20 years, been a ham for 26-ish, licensed in 94. And one of the things I'm passionate about is getting young people and kids into ham radio. So today, that's kind of the topic we're going to talk about, is getting young people in school and the schools into ham radio. So first, though, a couple little tidbits of news. Tidbit number one: the YouTubers Ham Fest has been moved. It is no longer on the 16th. It is on the 23rd of May now. So there's actually a website for that. Let me grab that up for you so you can take a peek here. Okay, if you go to youtubershamfest.com, it's still being built and everything, but this is kind of where you can get the most up-to-date information about who's going to be presenting on what streams and everything. So go check that out. But like I said, remember, the YouTubers Ham Fest has been moved. It's now going to be on the 23rd of May. So next thing, Contest University. Contest University is normally done that Thursday before Hamvention. Obviously, with the human malware virus, we can't do the Hamvention in person. So Contest University is now going to be free for everybody to attend virtually. All you need to do is head over to contestuniversity.com and register for that, and they'll send you all the information you need to your email. So that's that. So let's take a look and see who all we have here in the chat. So let's see. We got the Ape. Hey Ape. 741. Chuck. Hey Chuck. Mike. K at MRD. Uncle Mike. And already met Ishmael. Ishmael, guys who just came in, he may have some questions that need answering, so y'all feel free to help me out and answer those. In fact, he's got one now. What do you all know about the Kenwood TM-D710A and its capabilities and what I can use it for? So Ishmael is in 10th grade, so he's going to have a few questions. So we're going to see if we can't help him out. Okay. One more quick little tidbit. Online testing. People who are looking for online remote testing, that is slowly growing, and more people are giving online testing. AWRL is on board now. Anchorage has been doing it. Glarg out in Los Angeles. Several VECs are offering that, so you just kind of have to look around and find some of that. It's hamstudy.org/sessions, I believe, is one of the links to get you to check that out. Ginger Kessler studying for her license. Good deal. That's me swagging out right there. Let's see. Okay, so getting things started out in school. First thing you need is, well, you need kids who are going to be interested, and then you have to get some kind of staff member interested. Not necessarily the top administration or anything, but you do have to have somebody there who's got a foothold into it, so that you can get the word of what some of the advantages are up to the people who make those decisions. I was fortunate this year. My administration allowed me to teach 2 class periods of amateur radio. It's actually under the STEM umbrella, so I did teach some coding and some other stuff, but a main focus of what we were doing was amateur radio, and we ended up with 25 students and 3 staff members getting their license this year. Did end up with 1 student getting her license and upgrading within a couple months of each other, and 1 staff member upgrading as well to general. So that's a good thing. Thanks for dropping that, Jason. That's the link for the hamstudy.org/sessions. Okay, so anyway, like I was saying, you've definitely got to. Oh, speaking of, there's my kid, Jerica G. Hey, Father Unit. Hello, Child Unit 74 Alpha. Um, she is actually the student who got her technician license in January. Is that right? I think in January, and she upgraded in maybe the beginning of March to her general. And extra's next, right? So, but anyway, to get started in schools, you've got to have some kind of interest from kids and or teachers, and it really needs to be a combination of the two. Because contrary to what anybody might think, a teacher can stand up front and say, hey, you need to study for this and this and that and the other. But if the kid's not into it, the kid's not into it. So you've got to have both of them get interested. So the question is, how do you get the kid interested? Um, a lot of times people are going to tell you can start a ham radio club at school or a ham radio class at school and not spend any money. I'm just going to tell you, you're going to have to spend. Oh, there she is. So yeah, she tested technician in January and general in March, and extra in June, right, kid? And but anyway, what I was saying is you're going to have to spend a little bit of money, and the reason is kids, especially I teach predominantly middle schoolers, and kids in middle school, they're very hands-on kind of people. They want to do stuff, they want to build stuff, they want to break stuff, and so in order to get them interested, you're going to have something for them to build and or break. I actually started out by our IT department was nice. They gave me a bunch of old computers. We took them apart. I showed them. Basically, we just used those as test boards to learn how to solder on and everything. Nothing like the smell of solder to liven up a classroom. And by the way, this is my classroom back behind me, or at least it's a corner of my classroom. See if I can slide out of the way. I'll show you some of the stuff we've got here. Woo, I'm gone. Okay, that's our school club call sign. We actually just got that call sign shortly before getting out for spring break, and unfortunately, we never got to go back from spring break because of the human malware virus. This was actually a radio donated by a local club member, Carol Garvin, K5GET, donated that to us. It's a older 10-Tech Omni 6. And then just obviously the posters and whatnot. Yes, I know for all the CW people out there, we really shouldn't have a poster of the dots and the dashes. But, well, we have a poster of the dots and the dashes. And I think that's about it at the station. You can see, well, maybe you can't see this kind of off screen. I've got a little soldering station. And just off to the left of that is a big old table with about 6 or 7 soldering stations on there where the kids can work and solder. So what I did first, like I said, fortunately, my principal, he is really open and, up front. He's like, hey, what do you want to do that's a little different? I said, well, I actually kind of want to do some ham radio stuff. I expected to have to kind of make an argument for it. He said, sounds good, go for it. And he actually gave me a little bit of a budget. So I went out and I bought, I thought I had one in here, but I don't. I bought several of the Elenco brand FM receiver kits, and actually I'll put those in that Amazon store down below. So you can see what those were. I think they were like $18 a piece, something like that. And it came with a soldering iron, not a great soldering iron, but it did come with a soldering iron. And basically we learned how to solder. We learned what resistors were and whatnot. At the same time, we were going through the AWRL license manual. Going just unit by unit, kind of going through it, teaching some of the fundamentals of, radio and safety and whatnot. And then they were trying to apply it to, the kits as they were learning. But it is going to take a little bit of money. So the next thing, kids are going to screw up. Okay. So when they screw up, don't get too mad at them. It's not that big of a deal. It's $17. And I know, especially, I'm on a school teacher budget, so $17 is a lot of bucks. But at the same time, let them, like, for example, I'd have kids that completely, screwed their board up for that Elenco kit. I still made them go through the rest of the build, getting the practice to solder everything on and everything. And then I had extra kits that I bought on purpose, knowing that they were going to screw some up, and they built another one. And the look on their face when they actually turned it on and music came out. I've actually got a video of two of them dancing around to it. They're kids, so I can't show that here. But anyway, you're going to have to spend a little bit of cash for it. Awards and stuff. I showed them some of the awards that you can get for this stuff, like Worked All States and DXCC and whatnot. Talked to them about how even, having been a ham for 26 years, 25 years at the time, I still had never worked anybody in North Dakota. I actually ended up getting North Dakota, I think it was maybe November. So I finally have that Worked All States. Kids like awards, competition. A lot of people, a lot of teachers nowadays are like, oh, everybody has to, get that consolation trophy and get a hug. But I hate to break it to you, kids like competition. And so when you put a contest or something like that in front of them, it's just their nature. It's our nature to want to win. And so they instantly start looking and talking about, well, I know this person here. If I get them licensed, I can talk to them. One of them even tried to convince me to drive up to Memphis, Tennessee, and see if he could talk to me on his radio and whatnot, and count Tennessee and stuff. So, show them the contest stuff. When they actually get licensed, now we used the AWRL VEC, partly because that's who our local club, the University of Mississippi Amateur Radio Club, they were gracious enough that they actually brought the test to our school. And so we tested, goodness, I said 25 successful. I think I ended up testing something like 41 kids or something like that. So we had 41 kids. Not all of them made it, which is another point. Prepare them for the fact that, we don't always make it on the first try. And when we don't make it on the first try, that's okay. Don't give up. Just get back to studying and pick it up, and you'll get that going and get them licensed. Now, as soon as I had that first group of kids get licensed, okay, I was handing out, let me see if I can get it in the picture here. I was handing out these. Yeah, everybody's favorite radio, Baofeng UV5R. Okay, I spent a little bit of my budget on the $22 special, and I was handing these things out like candy. I showed them kind of how to program them. I programmed every single radio that I bought the exact same way. Thanks, Ape. I appreciate that. But most of the work on that was on the kids' part. So, I was just kind of the lucky one who got to lead them there. But the Baofeng UV5R, yeah, there's a lot of haters out there. But, hey, look, it kind of goes through there. That's kind of cool. But when you're working on a teacher budget, a $22 radio is a godsend. Because nothing sucks worse as a kid than being that kid who gets a license and you can't do jack with it. You're like, okay, I got a license. What do I do? Well, you got to go spend money and get a radio. And, well, we're talking 11, 12, 13-year-olds, a couple kids up in high school. But generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of pocket money there. So I was buying these using, whatever money I could come up with. I actually had another guy at the club donate one of them to me to give to kids so that kids could talk on the radio, which brought us to another thing that the kids truly loved. At first, they were frustrated, and rightfully so. They got home, and I had warned them that depending where they live, the rubber dummy load antenna might not be enough, but I made them all go home and try to hit the repeater. And, it's the gateway drug. That's right, Steve. UV5R is the gateway drug to ham radio. Once you get one, then you start spending more on, the Anytones and then the Icoms and the Asus. And next thing you know, you're broke forever and having to explain to your honey when you're married 20 years later why you need another radio. But I made them go home and try to hit the repeater. I took them all outside when they got their tickets hit. And I'll be honest with you, the Laurel VEC, the VEC crew that did our testing, those kids had a call sign that night. I mean, we tested 8 to 10 o'clock in the morning. I think those guys rolled out after the paperwork at like 10:30, 10:45. And that dude went home, the team leader went home and entered every single one of those things into the FCC database, and the FCC threw those call signs out that night. So the very next day, they were getting a talk on the radio. So I took them outside. We're close enough at school to the repeater that every single one of them got to make a contact on the repeater. All the hams that were around, they made sure they were more than gracious, and took some time to kind of explain to them what they meant. They would say things like, "What's your QTH?" and whatnot, and they would stop and explain to them what that meant, because while we might have seen it, and everybody knows this, when you get your license, you see a lot of things in the license manual and the question pool, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense until you actually start hearing it and using it. So, that's kind of what happened. Every one of them learned how to make a contact on a repeater. Then they went home. They tried to make a contact on a repeater. Most of them were not successful because of the rubber dummy load, but that's okay, because I also made sure to buy some aftermarket antennas. So, I bought some Nagoya 701s and some 771s, and I've got those linked in that Amazon store down below too. But I didn't just automatically send them with the 771 home because, well, I'm on a budget. And so if I could get a kid to make a contact with the 701, which is a few bucks cheaper than the 771, I made them go home and try it again. And if that worked or didn't work, they would let me know, and then I would swap the antenna out again and whatnot. And for a few kids, we ended up building ladder line J-poles, which is the part that they liked, because now all of a sudden they were back to building something. And of course, once again, here comes that B word again. I had to buy more stuff, because you can't just build a ladder line J-pole and not have ends and adapters to fit on your little SMA connectors and whatnot. So I had to spend a few bucks there to get those things on the air. But once you hook those up, these guys were able to make contact through the repeater, and they still make contact through the repeater. Some of them make simplex contact to each other. They're close enough they can do that. Some of them have started studying for their general because they want to be able to talk around the world. And, we had to make sure I'm a hands-on guy. I needed to get. So, well, and that's like Steve, that's a good point. A lot of them are hands-on kinds of people. They just went through and they memorized the question pool, because kids by nature want to kind of make the adult in the room happy until they turn into teenagers. Then they seem to want to make them mad. But at that age, they want to make the adult in the room happy. So some of them were just basically memorizing the question pool. And they would get the license. And in fact, one of them that pretty much just memorized the question pool ended up being by far one of the most into it hams that we ended up having at school. But you also have to remember they're kids. So you've got to do stuff that kids want to do. We played radio at school. I brought in an HF radio, and we threw a dipole up in a tree outside. That dipole was a whopping 9 feet off the ground, maybe, at the center, because that's about as high as I could reach. I'm 6.5 feet tall, and I've got gorilla arms, so I was able to reach up there a little bit. And so we got on the line on the area on HF, and fortunately, after calling CQ for a little bit, and I don't remember his call sign, it's at school, some guy was on the radio, and he stayed on for 30 minutes to make sure that every single kid in that room got to talk, which is another thing that you need to make sure you do. To get kids into it, kids have to talk. Okay? So obviously, they need the grown-up in the room, the license, the person with the license to be able to talk on HF, to be the control operator. But you need to just let them talk, let them play, let them figure some things out for themselves. Don't let them break, the $1,000 radio, but don't get livid if they come in and they've, completely screwed up the programming on their $22 Baofeng. It's a $22 Baofeng. Odds are you just plug it back in and program it again, and you're good to go. So, you're hearing me say a bunch that it takes money, and it does. Gosh, I haven't actually added up how much I spent. I imagine when it comes tax time next year, I'll add up some of that stuff. But there are some ways to get money. The AWRL has a grant that for schools where they can get some equipment. I have not applied for one of those. I'm thinking about applying for one for next year. There are also like DonorsChoose.org, which is a group that supports teachers and whatnot. Teachers can write grants through them. Hit up the local clubs. Sometimes they'll just pony stuff up. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who they've got a bunch of stuff sitting around that they might not have used in a while. And no, it's not the brand new, Icom 705 that I've got sitting right here. It's like, not really. Okay. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with that 10-Tech Omni 6. I mean, it works. You can get it on the air. You can throw it on there, and the kids can talk. So, don't be afraid to go over to these club meetings and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Anybody have any equipment they want to let us use? Beg, borrow, steal. Well, maybe not steal. Okay, and see if they can help you out. And don't forget that is actually a group of people who know a lot of stuff. Okay. I'm also really fortunate in that the local ham group, KI5HMW, that's one of my kids. I think that's Gage. Hey, Gage, if that's you, I'm thinking I'm remembering your call sign correctly. So, but anyhow, our club is fortunately, they're the Oxford Club, the University of Mississippi Amateur Radio Club. They're really gracious. In fact, they've started trying to revamp some of the meetings to target them towards some of the younger kids that are out there. Obviously, meetings have had to kind of go on hold because, we can't go anywhere. Yep, I guess if I squint enough, I can see that's your face in there. But anyhow, 741. My club has donated to the local high school, and not a lot, but it was something. And that's just it. If a bunch of people give a little, that ends up being a lot. So, Bill Crow, I was actually emailing with you about doing some of this stuff. He got the Icom 7100 HF, Anytone DMR in books. It's like pulling a tooth to get some of them on the air. Part of that is kids, they're not terribly familiar with it. So you've got to make them feel familiar. In fact, Gage, the dude that's in here now, he was one of the two kids that when they got licensed, they took off with it. And so whenever another kid would show up and be like, hey, I want to, they got their license, they want to learn how to talk on the radio, I didn't go outside with them anymore. I gave them the Baofeng or the Anytone, and I sent Gage and Parker out the door with them and said, hey, go show them how to talk on a repeater, help them make a contact. And they're a lot more comfortable in front of other kids than they are in front of the old fart in the room. So, but just be ready to know that you're going to have to spend some money. The teacher, whoever it is that's going to be footing the bill or the equipment for this stuff, is going to take a little bit of cash. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to take a bunch of cash. I spent a bunch of cash because I was teaching it to a bunch of kids. But it doesn't necessarily have to. You could probably get by with, just buying one or two radios and checking them out to kids and whatnot. Several of the kids ended up buying their own Baofeng radios, so that kind of helped. That made those other radios available for me again to be able to, give out to other kiddos. And then the next step works out to be like DMR or some kind of digital mode. Now around here, we have a DMR repeater. When it comes to DMR stuff, you kind of get what you pay for here. There's absolutely nothing wrong. What's up, Chris? Good to see you, man. Hey, this is your topic right here, Digital Analog Ham. You want some information about DMR? He's a good dude to go check out his channel. Okay, but the basic principle behind the DMR radios are the same, but when you're going to start working on this stuff with kids, the simpler they are to sell some candy. The simpler they are to use and program, the more likely they are to want to run with it. So, I've done a couple reviews on some Redivises and stuff like that, and they work. I mean, some of them you kind of have to do a little yoga and put your left foot behind your head and your right foot, like, in a semi-lotus position or something to make the programming work. But the Anytone 878 and the B-Tech, which is like the 868, those are solid radios, but you're going to have to spend a couple $100 for one of these, and just keep that in mind. But at the same time, when you pick up a DMR radio, and you can, like I said, you can get a cheaper one for under $100, then all of a sudden kids can talk to people all around the country and all around the world. Let's see, I kept notes because I might have been a wee bit nervous here. Okay, so once you get the kids going, they're going to need some sort of way to kind of take charge of some of their own learning, which is the ultimate goal for any teacher. Is, basically I would love it for my kids to pass me up in knowledge. I mean, I'm not the gatekeeper of anything, so I just kind of try to push them towards things that they can run with. And one of the things that you can do is the AWRL actually has, and if you remember, you can access this for free. If you're not, the sample issue is available to anyone for free. But they've got a new magazine out there called On the Air. And I have heard a lot of hams, oh, there's no real substance to it, this and that and the other. And yeah, if you're a ham that's been licensed for any amount of time, you're looking at this stuff saying, I know all this. Okay. But at the same time, hey, thanks for dropping that link. Temporarily offline. That's the Digital Analog Hams link for info on DMR stuff. He's a good dude. He's got a great haircut. You're going to love it. What was I saying before that? Oh, so the information in the On the Air magazine, while it may not be perfect for somebody who's been licensed for 20 years, that's good stuff for somebody who's been licensed for 20 minutes. When somebody gets in there and they're just licensed, they need basic projects and basic information. That's a good place to go. I mean, the last article just had a breakdown of, what do people mean when they say SSB? Okay, well, that's okay. It was on the test, but they've forgotten that by then because they don't really use it much. So it's just little reminders and stuff like that. So that's a great resource also. Yeah, I like the bald man haircut. So any questions or anything, y'all feel free to throw them in the chat. I know that I'm going to try not to mangle. I think it's Ishmael, if I'm saying that right. He was going to have some questions he apparently just scored a bunch of new equipment. And I told him that if I couldn't answer it, then somebody in the room could, because, there's a few of us around who would be able to help him out. I haven't paid for a haircut in over 15 years. Me either, Mike. Unless you count, I just upgraded my razors to Harry's razors, the 5-blade razors. And look at that, it's smooth. So, any questions or anything, drop them in the chat. Let me scroll back there and see what we've got in here. It's kind of been a minute. Brandon got here late. Don't want to miss any more. Will this be published? Yes, Brandon. This will be published on there. It's my first live stream I've done, so I think it automatically publishes on there. If not, then I'll do it. But if I have it set correctly, we'll find out together. Smoking it, you don't get it. I don't spend more than $20 on anything. I'd be curious as to how you get. Oh, you know what? I just saw my kid's name. That reminds me. Yeah, Harry's are nice razors. We started our own club, and that's, I mentioned earlier, that's our club call sign, N5LAF. But, kids like to be a member of a club. It's something that's at school, but is not school. Buy pizza, because if you feed them, kids will come, and let them play on the radio. So, in fact, my daughter she's the president of the club, and I don't have the list of officers here because it's a school where everything's in quarantine. But clubs, anything, like we had plans to get together for the Mississippi QSO party. The University of Mississippi Radio Club was going to barbecue and have the kids come out and do it, but obviously that fell away. It looks like field day is going to fall away too for the kids to be able to get out there and gotta go play Fortnite now. See you later, dude. Um, LAF is actually our district name. Is here in Mississippi they pronounce that word Lafayette instead of Lafayette. But yeah, that's what that's from. The actual local ham radio club, the Oxford Club, is the W5LAF repeater. So we took N5LAF as our call sign. But have the kids there, let them eat, invite them to other stuff. One of our plans is once all this quarantine stuff is over, I want to try to get some of them together, go to a park and activate a POTA station, and let the kids, hang out at the park, talk on the radio, do whatever kids do at the park, come back, talk on the radio, get stinky and full of food, and then go home. So, but that's kind of in a nutshell how to get ham radio started in the school. You are going to have to convince the administration or somebody that there is an actual value educationally to it. That's easy to do. I mean, just look at the math, look at the science that you're doing in there. It can fit into a lot of different classes. I even, one of the teachers got licensed as a social studies teacher, and he's tying it into his social studies stuff, just with maps and stuff like that. So there's a ton of educational tie-ins. Feel free to drop a comment or whatever, or drop me an email. Questions that you may have on how to do things with your administration, and I'm more than happy to help out. I will, Chuck. I'll let you know as soon as I know. I don't think right now we're allowed to gather in groups of bigger than 6.2 or something like that. So most of the boys in my class love learning how to solder. I also did some Arduino work with starter kits. We were getting into the ham more when the virus hit. Okay, yeah, and that's kind of what we had just gotten a bunch of kids licensed, and we were just getting rolling, and then boom, literally, I had to go in last week to close out my classroom, and all of my soldering stations still had projects sitting on them, where kids had been working on stuff. It was just kind of like, whoa, and everything just kind of stopped. I taught this class to 6th graders and 8th graders, and yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I appreciate it. It helps the channel out. Forgot what I was saying. We need to drop that ape. Anyway, and then the virus kind of hit and everything just stopped. So I do get the 6th graders that I taught. I taught it to 6th graders and 8th graders. I get those 6th graders back when they get to 8th grade. But the 8th graders, I don't actually get back into my class again. So the only way I get to keep interacting with them is through our club, which we've got that up and running, so we're good. Encourage your teacher. Use something like Google Classroom to stay in contact with the kids. It's an easy way that teachers know all about it. You can send out information. In fact, Ray Novak over at Icom just sent me a bunch of digital comic books, and I just sent them out to my kids. Just kind of something to fill the time during the quarantine to tie into ham radio a little bit. I've thought about trying to do this at the junior and high school. You should, Chuck. It's not, it's not as hard as you think. A lot of people, well, it's like the meme that you see, where people think it's CB. But in fact, it's on the AWRL website. They have resources. In fact, let me pull that up real quick. They have resources on there where you can get, if you go to License Education and Learning, and also encourage whatever teacher it is that you get to buy in, make sure they register as a teacher on here, because we get a discount on certain things. Like, I think here we go. Here's the license manual here. Sorry about my slow internet. I've been fighting with AT&T for 2 weeks. Okay, that's normally $32.95, and I think after my discount I get it for something like 20, 22 something like that. So you save a good bit of money here. I did buy 7 or 8 of these things, and kids got to work with them in pairs and whatnot. But let's see if I can find where that is here. There's actually coursework and stuff like that on here. Not sure if I can find it that fast. Yeah, I'll have to dig it up, and I'll post a link to it down in the description. But there are entire curriculums in here on how it ties into everything else. Let's see. Hoping this fall things will take off. Have Eric's contact. How do you get the I will send the link to those comics to you, Bill. Um, I'm kind of old and forgetting, so if you would do me a favor, drop me a comment afterwards so I remember, and I'll send you that link out there. There's a whole department at AWRL. Yeah, AWRL, and they are guys. Their education department is off the chain. Um, they get you discounts on stuff, and sometimes they can even finagle stuff like I ordered several license manuals and a couple other things that didn't necessarily fit the free. Oh, you get free shipping as a teacher too on certain things, but a couple things didn't fit the free shipping thing, and they're like, oh, we can shove it in the same envelope. Didn't charge me shipping. Stuff like that. So that's another good thing. Also, the AWRL is launching some of their lifelong learning stuff. If you want to learn about that, come check out my stream on the YouTubers Hamfest Day. But unless anybody has any other questions in the chat, yeah, 16 people watching, 14 likes. That's not a bad ratio. I'll take it for my first time anyway. Let's see. Most of the yeah, and also when you buy solder, buy the big roll, because the first time a kid's, they're like, ooh, watch, and they touch it and it melts and it disappears. It's like next thing you know, they're like, because it's just cool, and you're gonna go through a little bit, and that's a good teaching moment to explain to them, guys. Okay, let's look here. Explain what it does. Don't get mad at them, because I promise you, I did the exact same thing. Okay, but then explain to them. Okay, well, here's how it's supposed to go, and here's how once they get that initial play out of it, go from there. So, but that's that. Y'all don't have any questions or anything? We're gonna go ahead and cut it here. I appreciate it. Any comments or anything? Comment below. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Y'all take care, and we'll see you on the air. Don't forget, YouTubers Hamfest, the 23rd. Be there.